Hey, what's up? It's Kit. Time for another video. Today, we're talking about leaders, and it's a very under-discussed topic, especially for slow jigging. We're going to talk about that today. If you're new to the channel, this channel talks about the hows and whys of fishing. We cover everything from big game, ultralight, to everything in the middle, including fly fishing. And today, we're talking about jigging leaders, specifically slow jigging leaders. Now, before we even start, I have my leaders set up on this side. Okay, before we even start, let me just give you a little bit of an illustration here. Take, for example, that's the ocean. Okay, this is your boat. And then here's your fishing line. Now, you would think, okay, that's the rod. There's you right there, okay, holding the rod. You would think that your line is going straight down. Okay, like that. In actuality, it doesn't. It actually goes like this. Okay. Now, the reason why it goes like that is because of what's called flow. Okay. Flow is the movement of the water. It could be your drifting boat. It could be current. It could be both. But anything that's affecting under your line underwater, we'll call it flow. Okay. Now, flow affects surface area. And if this is your leader and you have a thick leader, what happens is that it gets affected more because of the surface area. It has a thicker surface area. And here's your jig. And the more it gets affected, the more your jig won't move naturally. And that's a problem because if you're fishing in the States and, there's a lot of fish, you'll get a lot of chances. Or anywhere in the world that has a lot of fish, you'll get a lot of chances and, fish competing and all that, you'll catch irregardless. But when you're fishing in parts of Asia that, you're fishing for one strike for the whole day, you get the point. Or when fishing's tough. So, in my years of fishing, I've actually kind of devised something that not only makes things simple for me, and I'm going to share it with you guys today. Okay, so I use 3 sizes of leaders, 30, 40, and 50. And I always say this is 1, this is 2, and this is 3. Okay, the farther I go towards this direction, the longer the leader. If I go this direction, it becomes shorter. Naturally, my number 2 would always be my in-betweener, and this is what I have a lot of because this is the most useful for me. Okay? Now, this system requires you to do arm spans instead of actually, sitting there with a tape measure and measuring the leaders precisely, because at the end of the day, guess what? You don't have time for that when you're fishing. So, to make things easier for me, I devised this. My thickest leader is 50. Okay? My thinnest is 30. And then in between, I have 40. 40 is pretty much what I use a lot of. 50, I use one arm span. Okay? Now take note, I am 5'6", okay? Or 167 centimeters. Okay? 5'6". Now, I use a 5'6" piece of leader when I use 50. Very, very straightforward. If I use 40, I use 2 arm spans. Okay? So 2 arm spans, that'll give me around an 11-foot an 11-foot leader. And then it'd be around 16 feet and change, or 15 and change for 30, which I do 3 arm spans. And it doesn't have to be exact. Sometimes I do longer. That's why I say 17, 16 feet. Plus, remember, sometimes you cut off and then it becomes shorter. But the longest one would always be this, and I start out with 3 or 3.5 arm spans. It doesn't have to be exact, but you take note of how tall you are, how short you are, and base it there. That way, it gives you enough separation, because with braid, it's very visible, and what you want is to have a little bit of separation from your jig. Very, very crucial, and that's practically why you use leaders in the first place, for stealth. But at the same time, you also have to consider that a thicker leader, you have to shorten, because if you make it long, flow would affect it more. Okay? Now, here's a very good illustration. Very, very practical. It's a ruler. All right? Go ahead and take a ruler, go to a bucket of water, or if you have access to a bathtub before you plunge in, or a swimming pool, take a ruler, okay? Stick it down, that deep, and then try to push it. And what happens is that it bends. Now, you're actually doing the same thing, only in reverse when you're fishing, because when you're dropping, the line gets affected by flow, all right? And the thicker or the wider the ruler is, the more resistance it's going to have in the water. Now, turn it sideways like that, then do the same thing. And you can see that it slices through the water easily. And it's the same thing when you're using thick leaders, and especially when you're using thick fishing line. Because what happens is that your fishing line, okay, your thick fishing line has more surface area for the flow to catch. And your fishing line is literally the biggest surface area affected by flow. It's not your jig. And that's very, very important. Okay. Now, if you have thick line and you have thick leader and you have a long leader, you have a parachute. And you're not going to stay on the bottom for long with that. All right. Now, another thing to consider. When you're using fluorocarbon, remember that fluorocarbon sinks, which means when you're working the jig, okay, it's not going to go like that. It's probably going to get straighter more than mono would, because mono floats, so it has buoyancy. Buoyancy affects your leader. Okay? It doesn't really, let's say it doesn't really affect it that much, but that bend on the line when you're dropping and then it curls up, that's slack. Okay? That is slack. And that's something that you're going to have to eliminate with your reel. So you're giving yourself another problem. This is the whole reason why fluorocarbon is actually a better choice when it comes to this. But there's a caveat. Okay? With fluorocarbon, it's harder to tie knots. And the most important knot in this whole system would be your FG or your PR. So your connection from your leader to your braid, okay, this is your FG. Very, very important. If you put a thick knot there, what's going to happen is you're probably going to knock some guides out. This is why PR or an FG is very important when it comes to fishing like this, because you want your whole system to be as slim as possible. And guess what? If that's bulky, what's going to happen is that that's also going to contribute to the resistance and the effect of the flow. Sometimes, you know, you'd say that, oh, it's too small, but yeah, every little thing matters though. And if you're anything that flow can hit and affect will affect everything overall. And this is the whole reason why you have to use the proper knots. Very, very slim. If you are not confident with the FG, I suggest you use mono first. Okay. Probably shorter lengths when you're first starting out. And what's going to happen is that an FG that's not too well tied will grip mono more than it would fluorocarbon, because fluorocarbon is very, very slippery and it's hard to tie knots with. Now, another thing with fluorocarbon, if you compare this to a normal 40-pound, this is thinner. So automatically, if you're going fluorocarbon, the line itself is thinner than its mono equivalent. And that's why it's ideal, most ideal for slow jigging. Fast jigging as well, you know. And in fast jigging, all you have to do is just bump this up a few sizes, because you can get away with thicker leaders in fast jigging than you do with slow jigging. All right. So I'm going to keep this short. I hope I actually covered the most important bits. If you have questions, give me a heads up. Comment section, please. Let's have a discussion. And that's it for this video. Thanks so much for joining us. It's a short one. And yeah, I just wanted to put it out there so that people would have at least a reference. All right. So a very, very easy system was shared with you guys today. That's what I call my 1, 2, 3 system. Again, thicker leaders, shorter lengths. And as you get thinner, you can actually put in longer lengths, with 40 being my most useful and 30 on a case-to-case basis when I need a thin leader. All right, so that's it for today. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Class dismissed.